Welcome back, A-Pushers. This is Mr. Crayson coming at you with another video, this time on Westward Migration from 1830 to 1860. Why did so many Americans risk life and limb to answer the call to go west? To be clear, west at this time means the far west in places like Utah, Oregon, and California territory. Oregon, Utah, and California had fertile soil for farming, and gold found in California made that territory even more attractive. The middle portion of America would not be largely settled at this time and was not seen as a desirable land due to droughts, rougher soil, and deep prairie grass root systems, which made it challenging to farm. So it is not very desirable land. In fact, it was nicknamed the Great American Desert. So why go west? During this time, it was a prevailing sentiment that it was America's manifest destiny to spread its culture, liberty, democracy, and equality from East Coast to West. Now, this term was coined by John O'Sullivan, an American journalist, and manifest means clear or obvious, and destiny, well, you know what that means. This is born out of an ongoing belief in American exceptionalism, that America has a unique greatness in its political and cultural qualities that other nations don't, and is therefore worthy of spreading. A really significant pull factor was fertile land in places like Oregon and California and even Utah. So that was one reason people went west. Another was to escape race-based and faith-based conflict in the East Coast cities. Think the Mormons. So Joseph Smith and the Mormons were being persecuted in New York. They left and went west. They did not find religious freedom here in Illinois, where they stopped briefly, as Joseph Smith will be murdered by a mob in downstate Carthage, Illinois. Brigham Young will ultimately lead the Mormons the rest of the way west to Utah and establish the city of Salt Lake City in 1847. Another major pull factor to the west is that there's gold in them there hills. So in California, gold is discovered. So now this is going to be the impetus, the motivation for thousands of people to come trekking to the west to get rich quick, finding gold in the hills of California. Another significant element of this is that it attracts people not only from the east, but from foreign countries. Chinese immigrants will make up 1/3 of the miners in the west during this time. And it will build up a population of Chinese immigrants to the point where nativists here in America will push for a legislation to be passed to prevent this from happening further. And in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act will be passed. Another gold rush town will be Denver, Colorado, because in 1858, 10 years later, you're going to have gold found there. So Pikes Peak Gold Rush is to Denver, Colorado. That city becomes a booming town as a result as well. Now, none of this trekking west would really have been possible without the mountain men's efforts. Now, who are the mountain men? The mountain men are people who were these rugged individuals that were brave enough to go venturing out west. Most of them started as fur trappers, and they then became very knowledgeable of the area to where they could lend themselves as trailblazers. So trailblazers are people who helped lead others through the area and ultimately even map out and chart these uncharted areas. And yes, the Portland, Oregon Trailblazers, the basketball team, are in fact named after these very types of men. General John C. Fremont is going to do a map-making expedition out west, and Kit Carson will be his guide along the way. Jim Bridger famously discovered the Great Salt Lake in 1824, making it possible for the Mormons in 1847 to set up shop there and establish Salt Lake City. So these mountain men played a very integral role in discovering these areas out west, mapping out paths to get there. A lot of these were Native American trails and such, but sometimes trails were blazed by these men through these areas to get west. Now, possibly the most famous of these trails is the Oregon Trail, which stretched 2,000 miles from Independence, Missouri, all the way to Oregon. And what was at the end? Why were people going there? Well, the destination was the Willamette Valley, a very fertile land for farmers up in Oregon. Interestingly enough, the Oregon Trail today actually coincides with some major highways. Route 30 and I-80 or Interstate 80 do overlap at times with what was originally this western path to Oregon. And there were no railroads at this time going out west. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1828 is terminus is in Ohio. Nothing's going out this far west until the Transcontinental Railroad, but that's outside the time frame what we're talking about here. So how are people getting here out far west at this time? The answer is they're either walking or on horseback or handcart, or even more famously, the Conestoga wagon. So made in the Conestoga Valley of Pennsylvania, this wagon is rough and tough. It has iron-rimmed wheels to rough any terrain. It has 6,000-pound load capacity, so it can carry a lot of people and a lot of supplies out west. But it's very expensive, so many people couldn't afford it. The trip out west took about 4 to 6 months on average, and this was if you were traveling about 10 to 15 miles per day. And you better leave early. I'm talking like April, May, if you want to be able to get through the Sierra Nevada mountain passes before snowfall comes in about October. If you don't, there are dire consequences, like what happened to the Donner Party. A group of 87 pioneers sets out for California dreaming of a better life. They decide to take a supposed shortcut recommended by Lansford Hastings in his guidebook, The Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California. This book promised a quicker route, but was based on some misleading information and limited knowledge of the mountainous terrain in the area. A winter storm hits. It traps them in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Food runs out after a few weeks, and desperation sets in. 4 months they were stuck out there. And in a horrific struggle for survival, some did resort to cannibalism. Of the original 87 travelers, only 48 made it to California, which just goes to show you the perils of westward migration. The fact that people were still willing to do it tells you a lot about what they thought the payoff would be like. Finally, women going out west served major roles in society there. They would follow their husbands out. They would work on the farms with their husbands. They'd open businesses like restaurants and boarding houses and inns. Their contributions led in large part to Wyoming being the first state to give women the right to vote in 1869. All right, that concludes our video on westward migration. Americans went west. They went for farmland, for gold, for religious freedom. They founded these major cities like Denver, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Portland, Oregon, and they ultimately are going to manifest America's destiny out west to the Pacific Ocean. All right, have a great rest of the day.